Good afternoon, everyone. Are you able to see the screen and hear my voice clearly? Okay, great. So, yesterday's class we were basically talking about the introduction about the operating system, the informal introduction. Today, let us start with the formal content. So, now this is what we are talking about. Operating system. The course anchor is going to be Professor Chandrava Hebi from RR campus. I'll be using her slides as well. Okay, and so all these slides that we are using in this particular course are taken from the our standard textbooks and reference books and slightly modified just to fit in to the present context. And objectives, yesterday itself we have basically discussed this. We are looking into the importance of operating system, why do we need to study it, and the five important things: managing processes, memories and IO devices. Scheduling part of it is the primary task of OS. That's what you are going to study in this particular course. And at the end of this particular course, you will be able to analyze and appreciate these particular things. Right? So this is what we have informally seen in the last class. Now let's come to the today's class. Now, why do we need an operating system? Is the first
ವಾರದಾಗ
question.
ದಿನ ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆದಂಗೆ ಹೋಗ್ತೈತಿ ಶಿವನ ಚಪಾತಿ
Why do we need an
ವಾರದಾಗ
operating
ಮಾಡ್ರೆ
system?
ಟೇಸ್ಟ್ ಹತ್ತೈತಿ
The first
ಟೇಸ್ಟ್
question
ಹತ್ತೈತಿ
that is coming to our mind.
ಚಲೋ ಬಿಡ ಸಜ್ಜಿ ರೊಟ್ಟಿ ತಿನ್ಬೇಕು
Okay. Sorry for some interruption in between. So primarily, I'm sitting in front of this particular system and taking an online class here. Let us assume that I am not very well versed with computers. Maybe I'm from a non-IT background or or totally from a non-engineering background. So I don't know anything that is happening behind this particular computer. All that I'm trying to see is a slide is appearing here. My webcam is on and it is capturing my video and it is giving being telecasted to 100 plus students who are sitting at their home and they are trying to see this particular or listen to this particular video lecture. Okay, so I am not bothered about what is happening in the background. So I'm basically trying to use this particular system and do the indicated purpose, that is delivering this particular talk over here or the lecture over here. The same thing is happening with many of the people. They are trying to use these computers or mobile or tablet or laptops and so on to perform a certain specified operation. Maybe you visit a bank, there is a clerk who is sitting in front of a system, you give a money, he deposits into the indicated account, or you give a check, he'll debit that much amount from your account and gives you a cash and so on. He will also be using this particular system for the specified purpose over there. Or you visit your college office, administrative office for some thing related to accounts or scholarships or some kind of certificates. They'll also open this particular system, check all the required detail, do their regular set of process, and help you in whatever task that you have asked for. Now, what is common in all these things is nobody bothered how is this particular things are happening. They are only trying to use the computer to perform the indicated task over there. How it is done, nobody knows, and nobody is even bothered to know it, right? So internally, so many operations will be happening in order to have this kind of smooth transition of users experience with the system is going to be taken care by what is called is our operating system. In this particular diagram, you see there is a centrally there is one powerful man or woman, you can call, I'm not gender bias, who is basically called as an operating system over there. This operating system is interacting with all other connected components. So it could be a keyboard, it could be a display device like a monitor, or it could be another input device called a mouse, or it could be an output device called a printer, or it can be running certain set of applications like maybe I'll be playing a music using a MP3 player, or I'll be typing in an Excel sheet and so on and so forth. So hundreds of applications might be running in parallelly. So all these applications are also once again going to be controlled and interacted with the operating system over there. So apart from this, there are quite a number of disk queries that's going to be done. Probably my Excel sheet wants to know something that I'm trying to store already stored in my disk and so on. So all those things are also going to be taken care by the operating system itself. Now, what you can understand here is the operating system is basically acting as an intermediary piece of software that is, giving a smooth experience to the end user without even end user bothering about what is happening in the back end. So all the operation that is happening in the backend is insulated by this particular operating system, and the end user does not even bother about these things. So that's the primary purpose of this particular operating system. So it may have to coordinate with all these connected devices and so on, but it should be able to deliver a smooth experience to the end user. So this is basically why we require an operating system. I cannot be expecting a bank clerk to type in some complex set of commands and try to execute one simple query over there. So it is not possible to train everyone to that extent. So instead, we wanted to have a small piece of program which can do these kinds of things internally. That's why we require an operating system over there. There are quite a number of different definitions for this operating system, but let us look into some of the common general definition. An operating system is a program that acts as an intermediary between a user of a computer and a computer hardware. That's what is depicted in the last diagram. So end user is insulated from all these things. The same thing is shown in the present diagram also. You have a user here, and there is the user's interaction is only happening through some set of application. You see, user never directly interacts with the operating system apart from the booting operation. So once the system is up and running, user is going to launch certain set of application, like I have run this particular PowerPoint here. That's an end user application. So I'm going to interact with this end user application. In turn, these applications are going to talk to the operating system, and operating system is going to put that particular information or communication with the hardware and making sure that the end user is getting the required option over there. For example, I am in this particular slide. All that I want to do is I need to go to the next slide. So what am I doing? I'm pressing a particular key in my keyboard, and in which software I'm interacting? I'm interacting with an application software called as PowerPoint, MS PowerPoint. So I'm pressing a key. This basically triggers an interrupt, and this application software now communicates to operating system. See, my end user wants to get the next slide, so please provide that particular information, and this is what is the content that need to be shown is passed on to operating system, and this operating system internally transforms all those information into the hardware. So what is the hardware that it is going to interact here in this example? It is this particular display device of mine, that is a monitor in this particular case. If I'm giving a control P and a print command, then the hardware is going to be a printer over there. So basically, operating system is interacting between the hardware and the user with the help of applications or softwares, and trying to make sure that the end user is having a smooth experience over there. So this is the informal general definition of the operating system. Okay. And what is the goal of the operating system? First thing, primarily execute user program and make solving user problem easier. As an end user, I am using this particular computer in order to solve a particular problem. If it is a bank clerk, he wants to deposit a particular money into a user account, or is the customer that who or she come to the bank. So the purpose of the end user is to deposit money into a specified account. So goal of this operating system is the clerk need not bother about how to do it internally. He will just use the application software, type in the account number, type in the amount, and press a button called deposit. So it should reflect. So internally, operating system is going to take care of how it is processed within his system. How does it connects to the server where the banking server is basically present, transfer this particular information via a network to a banking server, and so on. And within banking server, there is one more operating system that is running, which will receive this particular information from the clerk's computer, and it will take care how these particular information need to be updated into their central database. So all these things are done by the operating system itself. So it will give a smooth experience for the end user. And the making the computer system convenient to use. So if I would have said that, type in 100 lines of code every time somebody comes to deposit this particular money into a specified customer account, your clerk would have thrown your computer into dustbin and say, go to hell, I'll go back to my older method, I'll open a ledger and just directly write the entry. That is much easier for me to do it. Okay, but we are not going to put that much stress on the clerk. So we have developed this particular thing so that end user is going to get this particular smooth experience over there. Use the computer hardware in an efficient manner. So there has to be someone who is controlling all these things. Otherwise, this application software would have used the hardware left, right, and center. Everybody would have, captured a certain resource of the hardware and said, yeah, this is all mine. I'm not going to give it to anyone else, and someone else might be jumping to get that particular resource, and so on. You can understand, no, in a home there need to be a controlling person. If you don't have it, everybody acts like a boss, and things is going to be messy. So in our home, in terms of computer, the operating system is the boss who is going to control every resource that is present in the system. OS is going to tell who is going to use which hardware to what extent, right? So this is going to act like a controller over there, and it manages all the resources. What kind of resources? It could be memory, primary memory, secondary memory, cache memory, and all that, or it could be a single processor or a set of processor. So earlier when these OS were built, it was a single processor, but gone are those days. Now we have a bunch of processor present in a system. So if you have more than one processor, how these particular processors need to be handled by different applications, so that the overall load is balanced across all these processors. Even that is going to be decided by our boss, the operating system. And how do we control these IO devices? IO stands for input output devices. How are these things are going to be controlled and managed is going to be decided by the operating system. So primarily it is going to do two important things. One, giving a smooth end user experience, and second, controlling and managing the resources of present within the system. So that's basically the goal of the operating system. Now next question is, why someone need to study an operating system? What are we going to get out of it? Now, answer is very interesting. Only a small percentage of students are going to, percentage of people are going to involved in the creation and modification of an operating system. You know, every year lakhs of people are basically graduating as a computer science engineer, but do you expect everyone to go and work on the operating system? No, it's only a small set of people within that are going to, you know, get involved in an process of, you know, creation of a new OS or modifying or releasing a new patch into an OS and so on, right? However, all the codes are going to run on top of the operating system. As we already indicated in the last one, all application softwares are going to run on top of OS and they are going to interact with the OS. And having a knowledge of how an operating system works is crucial in order to build a good, effective, efficient, and secure software over there. This is where we want to study operating system. Though a small percentage of people are going to handle jobs in OS, larger part of the people are going to be ending up doing this particular job. That is the application development. You will be, you know, put into a development environment wherein to a customer requirement you basically build a software. Knowing how a particular operating system works will help you to build a better program which is secure and efficient. You know, you can't deliver a particular system wherein the customer will hit one button and after having a cup of tea he comes back and sees those results. So gone are those days. You cannot you know, afford to have such kind of software. Now the day by day we are becoming very impatient. For some reason, if your system is stuck here, you would have hit that particular mouse or keyboard 100 times. You don't even ready to wait for 2 or 3 seconds. So that's the kind of, you know, expectations that we have in today's world. So you need to be really building a really efficient code so that, you know, the end user experience is going to be smooth. So in order to build such a code, you need to have an understanding about the working of the operating system, so that many a times when you build a bigger piece of software, it is not going to be an efficient one. It is going to consume a lot of memory over there. There will be a lot of latencies. Then your manager will come and sit on top of you and say that, look, I have committed to my customer that the response time is going to be few seconds. You modify your code so that no compromise on quality of code, but it need to be very efficient. So how do you do it? You need to track what is eating the cycle over here and how do you fix it. So knowing these particular things is going to help you in doing that particular things. And of course, we want to understand the fundamentals of the operating system. So that is why we are learning this particular subject over here. Now, these are some of the important concepts that we need to know, some of the important terms, I would say, we need to know before we jump into the study. One is processor. You already studied about these things in the previous courses like computer organization or logic design or microprocessor and microcontrollers and so on. Now CPU has got a set of bunch of registers which is going to keep track of the address, data and so on. So this is one important thing. And the second important thing is going to be a memory, which could be a primary or secondary or a cache memory, and as well as there are some IO devices that is going to be present, which will also have a small part of memory which are called as buffers. So if I open a particular document and say print, all that data get transferred into this particular buffer, and in turn these IO devices are going to fetch the data from this buffer and start printing on it. Now all this data transfer and instruction transfer between these three components are going to happen with the help of what is called as a system bus over there, right? Now the four components of a computer system, an abstract view looks like this. At the bottommost level you have the computer hardware. On top of that sits the operating system. On top of that it is going to be our system and application programs over there. And finally we have the end users over here. So if it is a single system, there could be user only one user there. If it is connected through a network, there could be a multiple user. If it is a mainframe system, there could be 100 number of users simultaneously working on that particular system. So that's the reason why there is n number of users that is shown over here. And as you can see, the application programs could be anything. It could be, you are in a laboratory, you might be using an assembler, or you might be typing some code of some programming language. Then you might even use a compiler over there. In order to type the program, you might have used a text editor there. And if you are building a database software, or you are building an application program which need to store the user data effectively and retrieve it, you might be using a database system over there, or anything of that particular thing can be an application program over there, system or application programs. All of them in turn, as I told you earlier, is going to interact with the operating system, and finally operating system interacts with the hardware. Hardware could be processor, it could be memory, it could be IO devices, or any other connected things over there. So all of them are going to be controlled by the operating system. All of them belongs to the category of computer hardware here. Right, I think the same points are basically covered over here. So we'll move further. I'll pause for a minute if you want to just go through this particular slide. In the meantime, if you have any questions, you can type in till this particular point. I'll stop for a minute just to see if everything is okay, any issues. Anjali, system bus is the one through which this particular data gets translated, here it is. I'll go back to this particular slide. There is some kind of interaction need to happen between these three components: CPU, main memory, and IO program, right? Primarily, I'm trying to print this particular document. So I issue a command, say Control P, and hit enter. Then what will happen is this application program need to fetch the data from the memory, what need to be printed, right? So assuming that it's a huge document that I'm trying to print, not everything is present in the primary memory. So it may have to even interact with the secondary memory and get you that particular information. And finally, that information should reach a particular IO device. In my case, in my example, it is a printer. So you need to transfer this particular instruction and data from this CPU, which will extract the data from memory and pass it on to IO device. So you need something to pass. This particular thing is called as a system bus. I'll give you a much simpler example. Suppose, I go and switch on a particular light. So all that I'm going to do is press that particular switch. That's exactly what is happening in CPU. And light is connected somewhere else. So let us say light is, this your IO device. And the signal need to pass that, that the end user has pressed a button over here. So you go and, illuminate the light. So current need to pass. So current is something what is there here. The current need to pass. So what exactly happens when you press a switch? Current passes through that particular wire and reaches the bulb so that it turns on and gives you light. So the wire is something very similar to our system bus over here. Hope that clarified your doubt. What languages are used in the development of OS? Very good. There are different languages that are basically used. Quite a few things were done using C language. Mostly it is C. The primary reason for going for C is, it gives you an control to access the registers directly. So there are, of course, few are developed using C++ as well, but not using Python or so. So C is the most preferred one. You talk to any of the hardcore system programmers, they never go with these fancy languages like Python, Java, R programming and all. They'll still go with C language. That's the very simple reason why even today in the campus recruitment, people still go back and focus on C language questions. Anurag will answer these things when we come to these particular topics of virtual machines. Okay, if these things are clear so far, then we'll proceed further. I will go on to the next set of topics. What operating system do? Now, the task of the operating system can be classified in two views. One is from the view of the end user and other one from the view of the system itself. Now let us look into a simpler one, that the end user. So user wants a convenient view with a good performance. So he doesn't care about how these things are performed at the back end, which resources were consumed, to what extent, all these things the end user doesn't bother. But whenever a user wants a particular thing to be done, operating system is going to do that particular job for him. This is in terms of, I'm talking about a single user environment. But when we talk about these mainframes or mini computers, wherein a set of users are basically going to use that resource, then the operating system has to be even more responsible over here. It need to manage the available resources effectively so that everybody gets their fair share of CPU, memory, and IO, and so on. So all these things need to be balanced. Otherwise, if there is an imbalance, somebody's work will be stagnant, and somebody will be nicely utilizing the CPU over there. So when there are multiple applications running with multiple users, OS job is much more crucial to handle them. Or it could be another case wherein the workstations are connected to a central server, and they would like to, use a resource like a file, or they are using a database, or they are using a print server, and so on. Now OS need to be designed such a way that it does not compromise between the resource utilization as well as individual users usability. So there has to be a balance between the both. So you cannot only focus on usability, or you cannot only focus on the resource utilization. So in such an environment, the OS need to balance the both. That's the reason why we want different flavors of OS. We are not going to run, develop and run only one flavor of OS and run it on every kind of system. We have different version of it which is designed for a specific process purpose. And when people write this particular operating system, they don't consider it as one single software and write it. They basically break into smaller part, each one focusing on one of the targeted areas. Some part of the code is only targeted on process scheduling. Some is purely focused on memory management, some is purely focused on IO management, and so on. When I put all of these pieces of codes together and integrate them, that basically becomes my OS. So as far as the development of OS is concerned, it's going to be done into smaller pieces of code. Now, adding to these things, end user experience, nowadays there is one more set of systems that have come into picture, which are handheld computers or resources. For example, it could be your tablet, or it could be your mobile phone for that matter. These are all comes under handheld systems. Now, there is another challenge that is being posed by these systems are, they are having limited resources. Your mobile phone is not, as fast as your, it is not better equipped like your i7 laptop over there. So there is a limitation on the resources in these handheld devices, and they also come with a small limited battery, though there is a greater enhancement is happening in this area now. Even with that, the battery life is very less. I think the max you might get it for 2 days if you are very conservative. But our OS systems, whatever is running in this handheld computer, need to balance that particular battery as well over there. And some of them don't even have a user interface at all, especially used in embedded system environment wherein there is no UI. You need to have a command prompt and start typing in a set of codes. I'm sure you're going to experience these things, not exactly embedded, but at least at the microcontroller labs, you're going to do these kinds of tasks over there. So a different flavor of OS is altogether needed in those cases. This is from the user's perspective. From the system's perspective, it is going to do two important things. One is called as one, it is job is to allocate resources. All these application program will bid for resources, that in order to do this task of user, I need so many instances of resource CPU cycle, I want so many instances of memory cycles and so on. Now the OS has to work in an unbiased way, satisfying everybody's needs in a best possible way. So if you don't have a controller, then everybody will start jumping into getting into these resources and nothing works out there. It becomes very messy over there. So in case of systems view, operating system is going to play a role of a resource allocator. It is going to take all these resources, validate it, and then decides who need to access which one, so that none of them are going to get too much or none of them are going to get too little, and everybody's job is done in this specified manner over there. And it also acts as a control program, so nobody gets access to something which is very crucial. So it will try to stop such programs over there in accessing sensitive data, and it is going to give only controlled access to every application program that's running on the system over there. Now, there is one common term with the OS that we are always talking is what are called as kernel. You might have heard about this particular thing. So in the coming classes, when we talk about processes, we're going to look into these details of kernel, but time being, you can understand that this is one program that is running at all times on a system, is what we simply call it as a kernel over there. So everything else that is part of your OS is basically a system program or an application program that's being run. There is an interesting thing with respect to this. In the US, I think in 1980s, somebody has filed a lawsuit against Microsoft saying that, Microsoft is selling all things in the name of OS, and we are, not having enough customers to do business and so on. And interestingly, court gave a justification that Microsoft cannot do that thing. It is it's an monopoly policy that this particular Microsoft is trying to play, and it restricted them from not including everything as a part of OS. So that's the reason now you are having Office as a separate software and different kinds of browsers and so on. A similar such thing is basically being also happened. If you have seen the news, Chinese government is blasting this Alibaba and Co for an monopoly in terms of the e-commerce market. So yeah, coming back to OS thing, basically this is what is called as an operating system. A kernel and a set of system programming is basically what we call it as an operating system over there. So this is basically a repetition of the same. Now, how does the computer system organization look like? So another view of it. So you have memory, you have connected IO devices, and you have a set of controllers over there. Now, hello, is there echo? Okay. So, one important thing to discuss here is what will happen when we press the start button of a computer. You know that the operating system is the first thing that starts loading into the system. But how exactly that happen? Any idea on this particular topic? You know that operating system is the one which is basically controlling everything. But how does this particular operating system is initiated? Okay. Now I'll ask you another question. Your computer has got different memory, primary memory, secondary memory, and so on. Where exactly is the operating system installed? In which memory it will be present? Is it in primary memory? Is it in secondary memory? Or is it somewhere else? Any idea? Okay, I'll ask you in another way. In which drive your operating system generally gets installed? Okay, C drive. So what is C drive then? Is it primary memory or secondary memory? Right, quite a few people displayed it as C drive. So it's basically your operating system lies in the secondary memory, not primary, it's secondary memory. Okay, so your operating system is basically installed in a secondary memory which is permanent. You can of course you can delete it, but it is always present whether your system is on or off. It is basically installed over there. But when I turn this particular system on, it need to get some kind of instruction which gets executed, and then your operating system starts loading over there, correct? That happens with the help of what is called as a bootstrap loader. Okay, there is something called as a bootstrap loader. So this is the one which basically starts loading an operating system. Now you will get a question, how does this bootstrap loader starts working? Because OS is not there, no? So how does this hardware will understand this particular bootstrap and from where it is even coming? Since the OS has not loaded, the primary as well as secondary memory's existence is not possible, right? Master boot record, okay. So all your systems will have something called as ROM, or to be more specific, they will come with what is called as EEROM. Have you heard of this? This is basically read-only memory. EEROM stands for electronically erasable ROM. So when this particular systems being shipped to you, it will all come with EEROM, which basically contains this particular bootstrap loader. So in your EEROM, the code of the bootstrap loader is basically printed and it is being deployed in your system over there. Now what will happen is the moment you power on a particular system, the bootstrap loader which is present in EROM is given a power and it will start executing one instruction at a time. And the job of this particular bootstrap loader is to read the code of operating system which is present in some specified memory location and start loading into all the registers and primary memory and so on, so that your operating system is up and running, and there onwards OS will take care of the operations over there. So this is how basically a system boots. Since this loader is going to be called at booting time, it is called as a bootstrap loader. You'll also get a question, what is that specified location? Bootstrap loader is basically clearly specifying everything need to start with memory location 80. So all operating system first code will start loading from that particular location. So bootstrap loader is pre-configured and all OS is basically starting from that particular location only. So that's how bootstrap loader will get to know where is the OS. It will just pick it from that particular location and start dumping onto this particular set of registers and so on. Once it is completed with all loading, it will hand over the control back to OS saying that my job is done, you manage rest of the things, and then the OS is live and running, right? So that's about the bootstrap loaders. And any point of time these interrupts are going to be triggered. So this is exactly what I basically told you. It's all written in the form of a slide over here. You can refer to this. Access to all these things will be provided through PESO Academy. Okay, there are something called as interrupts. So the OS will start looking for different kinds of requests that need to come from different parts. These requests are basically called as interrupts. There are two ways of handling this particular interrupt. One is what is called as polling. The OS keeps on checking one at a time. You go and see, is there any command from any of the process? If no, jump to the second process. If no, jump to the third process. If no, jump to the fourth process. Then similarly into IO devices and so on. It keeps on polling to figure out, do you have any work for me? As you can understand, this is a very uh, inefficient way, but that's how it is being basically handled. The other one is trapping an exception using a software generated one. Something triggers and that goes and sees into what is called as a vector, interrupt vector, wherein it is specified if this kind of interrupt is coming in, then perform this particular action. So that kind of interrupt vector is going to be present over there. So that's how operating system is going to handle this particular thing over there. Don't worry, it is only we are talking at the superficial level now. As and when the course progress, we are going to get into the details of these, and how these things are basically handled by the operating system is going to be studied over there. Right, so something about storage structure. There is a main memory. I mean, these are all pretty elementary. We have already learnt about these things. There is main memory, there is secondary memory, and some read-only memories. And I already spoke about EROM, electronically erasable read-only memory. And all these instructions, program, whatever typing you are going to do is going to happen in this particular fashion. So the RAM is going to fetch the instruction, give it to a control unit which will understand, decode it. For example, you are writing a print command in your say Python program. So hardware does not understand a print command. So if you give a print command which comes here, the control unit, the CPU is going to decode it in the form of zeros and ones, and pass it on to the ALU to execute it. This is how this particular code need to be executed, is command need to be executed, is basically what control unit communicates. The ALU is going to execute that particular thing, which might even come back and update some of these data which is present in RAM, and this particular cycle repeats in order to execute a piece of code over there: fetch, decode, execute, and restore. Okay, the four process. This is what is called as von Neumann model of computing. I'm sure you must have studied this in the elementary course on computer science at the first year level itself, or even before that nowadays. Now, these memories are basically, are going to be working at different speed. So this is the hierarchy that you need to know how it is going to be done. The highest speed is at the register level, then to cache, main memory, solid state disk, hard disk, optical disk, and finally on to magnetic disk. But the cost is basically going in the increasing order. The cheapest is magnetic tape, then optical disk, hard disk, solid state disk, and main memory, cache and register. So there is clearly a trade-off between the performance and the cost. So that is the reason why I cannot go with 100% register. So it becomes extremely expensive. So we need to strike a balance between the cost and the performance when is basically a system is built, so that the OS don't lag too much. At the same time, it is not going to be too expensive over there. All right, so let us stop today's class at this particular point and continue further in the next session. Thank you.